Hi everyone, David in History for the Ages here. So I have a really important topic that I wanted to share, and I really hope this is a video that reaches a lot of younger people. And also, I'm going to have a lot of educational resources in the description that you could use to talk about this upcoming Holocaust Memorial Day. It's coming up as the time I'm recording this, at least. It's very shortly coming up in May 2024. And Holocaust Memorial Day, or in Hebrew, what we say is Yom HaShoah, it is the day we remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered during the Holocaust and listen to survivors and honor them and remember what happened to the idea of let's not let this happen again. This Yom HaShoah, this Holocaust Memorial Day, is different than all others because it has not been since the Holocaust we have seen so many Jewish people murdered in one day. And it's not just what happened on October 7th that makes this Holocaust Memorial Day different. It's what we have seen afterwards, the tremendous rise of anti-Semitism globally that really is sadly reminiscent of what we saw in 1930s. And there are a lot of eerie parallels to that time period where in Europe we see, Jewish businesses being marked like Kristallnacht, where we've seen Jewish families. I have a family in London, some Jewish family in London, and they were telling me they were afraid to walk to synagogue because of fear of being attacked, right? These are incredibly eerie things to think about. And in the United States, I think we have seen the rise of anti-Semitism in one of the most concerning places of them all, academia, the youth. You guys know I'm a college history professor, and we have seen a rise of anti-Semitism on colleges across our nation, with things like in Berkeley, there was a mob that stopped the Jewish people from simply gathering and speaking. Back a while in New York, there was a college there where Jewish students had to hide in a library because a mob was coming after them. More recently, as the time I'm recording this, Columbia University, one of these Ivy League prestige schools, had to shut down their schools to remote learning because it wasn't safe for Jewish students. It's getting to the point that this is really incredibly dangerous. And anybody who's studied history and are students of the Holocaust know it was the youth in Germany that blindly followed Hitler, a good chunk of them. He had other supporters as well, of course, but that was a big chunk. And when I see polls where 60% of 18 to 24-year-olds have some negative view of Jewish people or are completely ignorant of the Holocaust, that's really worrisome. And none of this happened in a vacuum. And so we must acknowledge there has been a tremendous failure in academia. I have a whole video I made explaining how we got to this point, and I hope people watch that as well. Because if we don't deal with this core problem of what's going on colleges, this is just going to get worse and worse. Now, look, I know a lot of you listening to this right now are thinking, yeah, I know this, David's right, and that's great. You guys are the choir, you get this. But it's not enough just to listen to this or spend some time on Holocaust Memorial Day. Maybe you meet a survivor or something. That's not enough anymore. People need to be much more vocal. It was, Martin Luther King who said, we will not remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And there are too many people who've still been silent about all of this. you know and look, there have been people who have spoken up in ways, and I want to make this very clear, that ways they have not spoken up before in the 1930s. I saw a march in France, had 200,000 people condemning anti-Semitism. In the United States, there was a big march in Washington, D.C., 300,000 people, all peaceful and trying to send this message of why this is dangerous. And for people who think, well, I'm not Jewish, it doesn't really impact me. Folks, it never ends with the Jews. It didn't end with the Jews during World War II, and it's not going to end with the Jews today. Remember, Hitler killed Slavs and Poles and Gypsies and homosexuals. And today, when you go on these college campuses, they're not just calling for genocidal messages against the Jews. They're saying death to America. And, they have agendas beyond just the Jewish people. And this is not about wars going on overseas or anything like that. Please don't be naive to that, right? There is a deep concern of what's going on today. And so for the people who are speaking up, that's great. And we've seen it. We saw the Brandenburg Gate lit up with the flags of Israel, the Arch of Titus, Parliament, the Eiffel Tower. Those are great things that people have been speaking up. And personally, I had students of mine from decades ago literally send me an email saying, David, are you okay? I've had friends, I had a friend send me a text, and I'm never going to forget this. And she said in this text, David, if we need to, we will hide you. But more importantly, we will fight by your side so you don't have to hide this time. But just the fact that Jewish families are having these conversations of who is going to hide us this time is pretty frightening. Of course, what is different today is the attitude is, well, we're not hiding this time. And there are people who understand that it is a need that people speak up and fight against the tremendous rise of anti-Semitism that we have been seeing. So more does need to be done. There are people who are speaking and, up and, have to, one thing I'm also going to remember are those righteous Gentiles. I remember like during Hanukkah, people who are not Jewish were lighting the menorahs, across churches across our nation. Many people are speaking up in the rise of anti-Semitism. So that's all great. But what I'm wanting to do is reach the younger people, the blank slates, the people who may not know the history, may not understand the circumstances of how we got here. And I'm doing this because, yes, we want to honor survivors, but we also want to make sure what happened to them doesn't happen to our kids and grandkids. And you really have to ask yourselves, what would you have done in the 1930s and 40s? And what are you prepared to do today in terms of speaking up and being vocal? And I know the vast majority of people are good people. But remember, it wasn't the mass majority of people who were Nazis who led the Holocaust. It was a small group that allowed that created it, and it was a bigger group that allowed it to happen. So it's your jobs today to speak up, to learn about the history. I'm happy to share my resources with people, but we really have to make sure never again is not just some virtual signaling term, but something that we really mean and we take action on. So I really thank you for listening to this. Please share this. Please share the resources I have. This is the time for people to act. Thank you so much. God bless. Everyone have a great day.